I'm an attending here at New York IDA, and I'm one of the retina faculty's members, and so this is kind of like home for me. So it's wonderful to see so many people here. I expected like 10, but we have like 50. So it's
we're competing with some other events.
We are, okay. So
the Laser Society.
Oh, okay.
And something else.
Even better. So that's great. So I'm glad that everyone's...
We have the most alcohol.
So my idea has been something that a lot of people in here have been actually fundamental in helping me with. It's entitled Retinal Tamponade. It's nothing to do with AI, so I hope that you guys are, have whet your appetite for something different, even though those presentations were great. So what is the idea? So just to set the backdrop, a lot of people here are ophthalmologists and retina specialists, actually. Dr. Gentili's here, Dr. Baraj is here, and Dr. Rosen and Meenakshi is here as well. But they'll tell you that retinal detachments are very important because they can blind people. But in particular, one specific type of retinal detachment tends to really cause problems. There's inferior retinal detachments, which means retinal detachments that affect the bottom of the retina. And so we don't really have a great way of fixing this. They're difficult to actually tamponade, and the word tamponade basically means just put a force against. And because of that, they require surgery, and oftentimes these patients will redetach and go blind in some terrible cases. So one of the ideas would be to basically enable a method to potentially avoid perhaps surgery to tamponade these inferior retinal detachments better, and sort of do that so that way patients can have better outcomes. And the solution, and I wrote this, and then when I reread it, it sounds like something from Star Trek, but I trust you, it's not. Trust me, it's not. It's the invention of a dynamic matter phase shifting fluid that can treat both superior and inferior retinal detachments simultaneously, while potentially being administered at the bedside. So basically, this is a type of novel chemical technology that can help to fix retinal detachments of any type. That's the hope. So after sort of a long time of in vitro testing, we actually came up, and Sean's actually part of the team, Dr. Rosen's part of the team, we came up with 5 experimental fluids that can self-transition from what's called a heavy liquid, which actually tamponades the inferior retina, to something called gas, which we use quite often to tamponade the superior retina, which is the top of the retina. And so the reason why this is great is because you can have simultaneous superior and inferior retinal tamponade should you require it, if this were to work. And then one of the other major innovations that could come of this is that you could use this for potential bedside use. At the moment, we can treat superior retinal detachments with something called gas, which can go into the eye and then the body will respire it out over time, so you don't have to take that patient to the surgical suite. But in this case, you might be able to do that for inferior retinal detachments as well, and that would be a really big reduction in morbidity. So one key positioning sort of element of this is that it's not a therapeutic. For therapeutics, it's very difficult to kind of, I guess, get it to the market. There's a lot more regulations, a lot of regulatory burdens that you have to hurdle. But this would be classified as a medical device like the other tamponades that are out there. Existing tamponades that we use right now exist in both in gaseous, heavy, liquid, and oil form. So there are 3 different phases of matter that they all exist in, but this one aims to kind of unify all the meritorious aspects of each one of those tamponades into one. So that would be very useful for us, and any retinal surgeon, I think, understands that part of it. So just sort of where we've been, we also were very fortunate to receive, Louise is here, the 2018 Mount Sinai Innovation Partner grant. We also were able to receive a New York IDA Infirmary Foundational grant. And the key aspect of this is that these are, for the most part, those are non-dilutive sources. So if people are, want to go and apply for these things, they really should, because they're great resources. And then we were recognized for kind of being an innovator. And and right now we're currently in the midst of a 3-month animal trial. So Louise, that actually is happening finally, okay? And so this is great because if we can show safety, then we can really, start to show that this can be useful in the clinics. And I often say this because when you look at the data, I'm not going to get too technical here, but retinal tamponades were first sort of invented 27 to 30 years ago, and we haven't really advanced since then in terms of actually fixing retinal detachments in terms of the inferior retinal detachment genre. So this would possibly be the first advancement in retinal detachment repair in over a quarter of a century. So that's very, hopefully that works out. So thank you.
Thank you, Avnish.